What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today I'm bringing you a Prismatic Warlock build that has been requested again by some of you. Fire and Ice 2.0 Amplified is what I'm going to affectionately call it. It is everything that you love about solar and stasis combined into one convenient package with some benefits from the artifact in Heresy here in Destiny, and you can spawn autonomous turrets. You can generate your super in 1 minute. You will undoubtedly generate a lot of orbs of power and be able to help your teammates absolutely level the battlefield in any activity that you might find yourself in. Endgame or general difficulty, it doesn't matter. You can customize this build to suit a variety of your personal needs, and you can pick a variety of weapons that you personally like most. It is extremely flexible and extremely powerful. So if you've been looking for a way to incorporate stasis and solar into Heresy, look no further than this build. This build is extremely fun to use, and I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun using it as well. If you do find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a fellow Warlock out there who is looking for a way to incorporate solar and stasis into this season, send them my way, or please share this video with them. My goal is to help as many people as possible. This video, it was just as much fun to make as it was to build test, and once you guys get used to the cycle of gameplay, I think you guys are really going to like it. So I'm going to get right into it. Let's go. Fire and Ice 2.0 Amplified. Here we go. We've got the Prismatic Warlock subclass. Our super of choice is going to be Song of Flame. Now, you could switch this out if you wanted for Winter's Wrath, but quite honestly, Winter's Wrath does not compare to Song of Flame as far as the ability to spam high damage as well as solar explosions, ignitions, things of that nature. But if you are wanting something different, you can absolutely put on Winter's Wrath. In fact, I see some people out there absolutely decimate with this super once you get used to how it works and being able to use it while it's in its cooldown mode. For abilities, we're going to go with the Phoenix Dive. Phoenix Dive has a 55-second cooldown as opposed to 1:22 for either one of the rifts. The glide of choice is completely up to you. I prefer the burst glide, but you can use whichever you want. The only part of the build that is not going to be anything related to the theme of the build, which is fire and ice, but amplified, is the Arcane Needle. The Arcane Needle just makes sense to use because we're going to take advantage of its ability to stack 3 times in our armor, which I'll go over here in a little bit. But basically, this is going to be the only thing that's not related to the fire and ice while amplified part of this entire build. It just does excellent tick damage. You can still spawn tangles, and it's just easier to use and get back than any of the other options. The grenade of choice is going to be the Storm Grenade. We're not actually going to be using this grenade to deal damage. We're going to be using it as a consumption, which I will go over here with the armor. Our first aspect up is going to be the Hellion. Activate your class ability to summon a solar mortar that lobs flaming projectiles at distant targets. Targets damaged by the mortar are scorched. If you land enough of these Hellion mortars on an unstoppable champion, you will stun them, and I have seen it happen. The reason that this makes sense to pair with our Phoenix Dive is you can do your Phoenix Dive from practically anywhere. You can do it into a group of enemies. You can do it away from a group of enemies. You'll get the Hellion procced, and as soon as you turn around, it'll already be hitting enemies coming towards you. Next up is going to be the Bleak Watcher. Those who have seen previous builds with me using this with what's going to be our exotic armor know the benefits of Bleak Watcher. Hold and convert your grenade into a stasis turret that fires slowing projectiles at nearby targets. If you do enough slow stacks on a target, you will stun overload champions. But this is going to apply to pretty much any enemy that gets slowed. Think of it as just a universal stunning capability, because if you're frozen, and that'll give you more time to unleash more damage. First fragment is going to be Facet of Purpose. Picking up an Orb of Power grants either Bolt Charge, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield based on the super. Since we are running Song of Flame, or at least I am in this instance, every Orb of Power I'm going to pick up is going to give me Restoration. This is another reason why I have this picked over the super for Stasis. Frost Armor doesn't really do anything as far as giving you your health back. It just gives you damage resistance. Well, that's not going to be great when you are picking up Orbs of Power and just getting Frost Armor when you're critically wounded. At least not in my book. Once your health is at a critical low, all it's going to take is maybe 1 or 2 normal hits of whatever around you to basically make you die. And Restoration is going to instantly regenerate health and shields at the same time, which makes more sense, especially if you decide to take this into a sweaty activity. Facet of Awakening is next on our list. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows grants an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. So the 2 damage types that you're going to be utilizing are going to be Stasis and Solar. Again, going with the fire and ice theme. Fire sprites are going to come from your solar weapons, and they grant grenade energy. The Stasis shard is going to grant you an additional tick down for your melee damage as well, but because it's darkness energy, you're going to be getting additional grenade energy back. So that's going to take us into Facet of Balance here. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. So these two are going to work in tandem, and the irony behind all of it is kind of funny. You know, you're going to be doing darkness damage to get your melee back. That's going to be Stasis. So every Stasis shard is going to give you your melee energy back. But here it's going to give you your grenade energy back because it's a darkness damage. Over here, your fire sprites are going to give you grenade energy back, but over here, your light damage or your solar damage is going to give you your melee back. So basically, these two are basically going to compound on top of each other, giving you equal parts theoretically if you use them both equally. Melee and grenade energy back at a ridiculously rapid rate. So if you're spamming both types of weapons, theoretically you should almost never run out of either ability energy, which means you're going to be able to do a ridiculous amount of carnage. Also important to note, with Facet of Purpose, because I'm not running Feed the Void, which is a staple in pretty much every Warlock build, Facet of Purpose is going to cover us for the additional health and shields regeneration, because Feed the Void would generally give us health and grenade. But as you can see with these two, because of the damage types that we've picked, we're going to be able to get our grenade back ridiculously quick, and we're going to be able to get our melee back ridiculously quick without Feed the Void, and Restoration is going to cover us on the health portion. Facet of Sacrifice is next up on the list. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. Now, you can swap this out for Facet of Courage, which is your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities do increase damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs if you want. You get the same bump to Discipline, which is a plus 10, but what you're going to have to decide, and I'll go over it here when we go over the weapons, is what you want to spec into more. Do you want to do a little bit more fire than ice, or do you want to do a little bit more ice than fire? It's really going to depend on you, which you prefer. That's why this build is going to be extremely useful for a variety of different activities, and you can completely customize it to however you want to do. Next up on the list is going to be Facet of Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. This is a no-brainer, especially because there's not a lot of surges that revolve around Solar and Stasis this season. So you want the ability to have a little bit of extra protection from incoming damage, whether that's melee or, you know, enemies are firing their weapons at you or whatever. When you're surrounded, you have a little bit of extra protection. Last but not least is Facet of Ruin. Here we're going to be able to take advantage of basically both benefits here. Increase the size and damage of the burst when you shatter a stasis crystal or frozen target, and increase the area of effect of solar ignitions. Depending on which weapons you use, you're going to be able to spawn a lot of stasis crystals. Depending on which weapons you use, you're going to be able to spawn a lot of solar ignitions. And depending on whichever weapons you use, you're going to be able to do a mix of both of them. So, I mean, realistically, Facet of Ruin just makes sense to pair with a build that's going to feature both of its main elemental damages, and that is stasis and solar. For the armor, my recommendation is to have a T10 in resilience and at least a T7 in discipline and strength. You can see I've got my discipline at a T9 and I've got my strength at a T8. That's going to be even better than a T7, but because we're going to be switching between our solar and stasis weapons regularly, you're still going to get your energies back quickly, and you're not going to have to really worry about your intellect, because either super that you pick is considered roaming super, so you're going to be getting increased energy back from the damage that you deal. So the more damage that you deal, i.e. with your turrets that are going to be spawning, or with your weapons or whatever, any damage that's coming from you to the enemies, whichever damage it comes from, is going to count towards your super. So having it at a T5 or even a T3 is fine. Recovery, I recommend having at least at a T4. The reason for that is it gives you an additional cooldown on your Phoenix dive. So instead of it being 55 seconds, you're probably going to be somewhere around 45 or 40, maybe even lower, depending on how high you keep your recovery. Mobility, I just recommend keeping it at around a 3. The reason that you want it at a 3 is because if you dip lower than that, what's going to end up happening is you might move a little bit slower than intended. So I'm going to go through weapons right now, and this might be a little bit longer of an explanation than my last go through of this fire and ice. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of categorize each weapon so that it hopefully helps you decide what kind of build you want to try to run. So the way that I have it set up right now, if you're going to be running higher end content and you're not worried about speed running, or you're not just running around for fun, I recommend using Wicked Implement as your numero uno. This is going to be for your ad clear somewhat, mostly. This is going to be for dealing with champs, and this is going to be for dealing all things that might be coming your way that you might be wanting to apply buffs that slow them down. Wicked Implement, if you don't know, can stun overloads and unstoppable champions by freezing and shattering them. So if you land enough precision shots, which is what creeping attrition is, the target becomes slowed. Apply enough stacks of slow and you freeze said target. So if you are going to be going into an activity that is considered to be endgame, Wicked Implement would probably be my number one choice for this kinetic weapon slot. In addition to that, you have other options. If you're just doing generalized content, you can run with the Lost Signal. Lost Signal is a staple in a lot of people's builds last season. The reason it's not a staple in a lot of people's builds this season is because it doesn't offer benefits like Chill Clip. If it had Chill Clip, this could easily substitute in for any of these other options. If you want a barrier piercing option, I always get tongue-tied when I try to say that. Basically, the infamous stasis sidearm with the ability to shoot a charged freezing shot that freezes targets on impact. You can also run with the Sanuna, which can roll with Headstone and Feeding Frenzy. You can also run with Tanasha's Mastery, which again can stun all three champions. The two weapons that can stun the most champions are going to be Tanasha's Mastery and Wicked Implement. All of these other ones are going to be based on your preference. The regular sidearms, as well as this sniper rifle at distant pull, can be responsible for barriers, with the exception of this one, which can, freeze targets, but you're going to have to proc that. These other options, the the fusion rifle here with chill clip, that's going to be able to stun unstoppable champions. And if you apply enough slow stacks, you're going to be able to stun overloads as well, but it's very, very unlikely, given that there's already overload stunning capable weapons in your heavy slot. So that's really going to come down to how you want to do it. I just ran a regular strike with Ager Scepter, and I mained a different weapon for the solar. Honestly, I had a ton of fun doing it, but if it's not going to fit in the activity that you're running, then you're going to have to make a decision on how you want to do it. You can also roll with the exotic grenade launcher. It's not going to turn a lot of heads in higher end content like GMs or Master Lost Sectors. In fact, you'll probably get a lot of looks your way in the negative light because it doesn't really fit. However, if you're just running general content, this is going to be a fun option to use as well. So realistically, it's just got to depend on what you feel like doing as the player. I would say probably the most satisfying weapon to use in this slot from all these different options is probably going to be Lost Signal, Tenacious Mastery, or Ager Scepter. The only exception would be Wicked Implement if you want the Scout Rifle to be your main, because it is a powerful weapon. So that's just something to think about for the kinetic weapon slot. In the energy weapon slot, you have a ton of options that you can use at any given time. So I'm going to go through them and just kind of explain where I've got it right now. Because I'm running Wicked Implement as my numero uno in my kinetic slot, I need something to be able to shoot at barrier champs when they pop their bubble. Freezing them is not going to necessarily stop them, nor will it do enough damage to get them to be stunned or slow them down fast enough for me to take them out at all times. That will be enough sometimes, but not every time. So I need a backup plan. That's why I have a Baron action as the sidearm, so it can pierce barrier champs. I also have Incandescent on this, so it's going to spread Scorch to surrounding targets if I decide to pull it out for ads. For generalized content, though, you can use virtually whatever you want, whatever feels best to you. You can run Sunshot, the BXR Battler, Amit. I mean, you can use Beloved. I mean, heck, if you're not using your exotic in your kinetic slot, you can put on Still Hunt. Polaris Lance is a real good option. If you don't like Wicked Implement, but you like the idea of using a scout rifle at your own pace, you can swap that out, put on Polaris Lance. Once you do enough Scorch stacks on a champ, you will be able to stun unstoppable champions, which means all you have to worry about in your kinetic slot is going to be, usually the barriers are few and far between. It's more about unstoppable and overload champs. So make sure you're checking the champ listing before you run your activity. But this will free you up to put a barrier stunning capable weapon on here, or put on Tenacious Mastery, or run your Lost Signal. Polaris Lance is still OP, even though there's not any solar love this season. So just something to think about when you're going through the options you can pick. Other barrier stunning capable weapons you can put on the Drang, you can put on Still Hunt, you can also put on Beloved. If you want to get real creative, you can use Lord of Wolves. The way Lord of Wolves works is, once you have the catalyst done, when you hip fire the weapon at an enemy, it will scorch them. Dealing enough scorch stacks will stun an unstoppable champion. So theoretically, you can stun an unstoppable champion with Lord of Wolves the exact same way that you can stun an unstoppable champion with Polaris Lance. But being that this is the theme, Fire and Ice while amplified, this is going to be more about what is most fun for you to use. These are all options that you have to think about when you're running like a Master Vanguard or a GM, if you do want to take this into a GM or a Master Sector or whatever. As you saw in the opening video, I was running it in harder content with a buddy. This still held up, and I used this exact setup, which is why I have it featured here. But make no mistake, depending on what I'm running, I'm putting on whatever I feel like running in that point, because I'm getting equal parts ability energy back anyways. So I'm going to be seeing equal parts fire and ice as much as I want. So that's kind of what you got to think about for the energy weapons. For the heavy weapons, you have quite a number of options that you could use. Remember, every machine gun with the artifact, all three of those, whether it's stasis or solar, have the ability to stun overload champions by the artifact. So you don't really have to worry about that. Just pick whichever one you want. I picked this one because it's got Dragonfly on it, and I really wanted to see how it went. As you can see, I killed 3 champs with it, so I give it my stamp of approval. But you can also run Speleologist. You can also run Fixed Odds. Fixed Odds has been a favorite of mine for a long time. I just don't have any place for it in this season because it's got Incandescent on it. Speleologist will probably be one of your best bets from, fail safe. You can put Enlightened Action and Target Lock on it. And this thing does, it does rapid fire. It's 900 rounds a minute. So you're going to stun that champ quick. Or if you want to get really creative, you can put on Briar's Contempt or the Suspectum. The Suspectum can roll with Chill Clip, which means, you guessed it, you dump enough slow stacks into a target, you can stun them. So not only can you get the benefit of particle reconstruction from your artifact, you can also stun champions with your linear fusion rifle. Or you can use Briar's Contempt. Briar's Contempt is a slept-on linear fusion rifle from Root of Nightmares. Reconstruction and Focus Fury, you take this into the final boss of Warlord's Ruin, and I'm telling you, even with a hunter who's using Lucky Pants and Malfeasance, or virtually any other damage spam build that you can think of, Briar's Contempt, it's not going to beat them, but it's going to match them pretty darn close. And people sleep on it all the time. So if you want a linear fusion rifle that can stack with Focus Fury and has reconstruction, so you never have to worry about reloading it before you put it away, Briar's Contempt is a great option. Or you can switch out Whisper of the Worm. Whisper of the Worm, of course, is a sniper rifle, and if you have the artifact perk selected for piercing sniper rifles, you can stun barrier champs with this. It is also a fantastic DPS weapon. So if you are going into a situation where, hey, maybe you want to run Tanasha's Mastery in the Kinetic slot, okay, that's going to take care of your Unstoppable and Overloads and your barriers. But you also want to have something really good for DPS that can maybe also take out barriers from a distance if you need to. Whisper of the Worm would pair very nicely with that. And that would leave you virtually open to running whatever you want in between when you see champs. That makes this build extremely versatile, which means you can still run your fun weapons. So just something to think about. All of these options, and I know I threw a lot at you, so make sure you circle back. I'll have a chapter, start with the kinetic weapons again. I'll also have a chapter for the energy and the heavy weapons. Make sure these are all viable options, and you can swap them in and out depending on how much, freezing and how much burning you want to do to the enemies. Because everything else that we're going to have selected practically is going to be the same armor-wise. So you're not going to have to feel like, oh, every time that I change up a weapon, I'm going to have to fundamentally change the rest of the build. No, this is supposed to be a fun build. It just so happens that we can take advantage of both the artifact perks and some intrinsic perks and some exotics to be able to take advantage of stunning capabilities that you wouldn't normally get and are not considered meta right now by any means. But if you love solar, or you like stasis, or you like mixing the two together, that this build will absolutely work. You just got to be a little bit patient with it, especially in a non-surge activity. So just think about what you're doing when you're selecting the weapons of choice. None of these weapons are impossible to get. These are all relatively easy to attain weapons, with the exception of maybe Briar's Contempt if you haven't run Root of Nightmares. Fixed Odds from the dungeon. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The rest of these weapons are relatively simple to get. You can get, like Amit, for example, you can get from the Exotic Mission Rotator. BXR Battler, of course, you can get from running Dares of Eternity. Wicked Implement. The only thing that might slow you down would be if you don't have the catalyst. So if you don't have the catalyst, that's okay. That's why I have so many options. But Tanash's Mastery, you should have at least one of these with Chill Clip. It doesn't really matter the first perk, but the Chill Clip is the key one here. Or you can go over to Banshee and pick up a Sanuna. It really just depends on you. So whatever you like and feel the best with, I would say roll with that, and then outfit the rest of your weapons to handle champs if you need to. If you don't, run whatever the most fun weapons are out of all the options I've given you, or your own. It's completely up to you. As far as the artifact goes, there's only a few things that you need to be conscious of if you're going to be running a fire and ice build like what I've got. First up on the list is make sure you have your weapons selected for stunning champs. Those that saw the live stream by Bungie, you know that we're going to be getting an additional weapon type to stun champs. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen, but just know that's going to be implemented into my future builds, so make sure you guys are sticking around for that. But with the way that I have it set up right now, overload machine guns and piercing sidearms applies because Wicked Implement is going to be taking care of the other two champs. Or, well, the Unstoppable and Overloads by freezing them. But either way, I still have it outfitted with additional weapons to take care of two champs. So if you do put in a sniper rifle, make sure you select that. And if you switch out your machine gun, which you would normally be using heavy ordnance regeneration for additional grenade and melee, make sure you switch that out for particle reconstruction. The only other perks, if you will, that can be applicable to a build like this. Defibrillating Blast. Stunning a champion grants maximum stacks of bolt charge. Triggers an arc bolt that heals you and jolts combatants that it damages. If you are running activities that has champs, you still have the ability, thanks to this artifact, to be able to get bolt charge. Once you get a bolt charge, virtually any ability damage or kill at a target is going to spawn a lightning strike. So you can take advantage of some arc on top of running zero arc, practically. Flashover is another one. When you gain maximum bolt charge, you also become amplified. Lightning bolts deal more damage. So, again, you're not running anything arc related, essentially. Just your arc grenade, which I still haven't gotten to how we're not going to be using that for what its intended purpose is. But you can still get amplified. Dreadful Finisher. Get yourself some extra special ammo after you defeat powerful combatants anywhere in the system. Dielectric, I recommend putting this on just for the sheer fact that so many people are running arc-specific builds. You're bound to run into a fire team where you're going to be dealing with arc debuff targets, and you're going to be able to get bolt charge when you help them defeat those arc debuff targets. Last but not least is going to be King's Vestige. Defeating powerful Taken loads your weapon with Taken energy. The next time you fire, launch 3 Taken Seeker rounds that disrupt and exhaust targets. So this one's going to be kind of a gamble as well. If you are running the Nether activity, this is going to be applicable to you 100% of the time practically. If you're just clowning around in Dares of Eternity, this will apply to you too because there are Taken in Dares of Eternity. But if you're just running, regular Vanguard strikes, you might see Taken once every 3 strikes, for example. The Lost Sector that is currently in rotation that does have Taken in it, but you never know. 2 days from now, the Lost Sector of the day might not have any. It might be Cabal, So just keep King's Vestige on just for the sake of if you see Taken, you can take advantage of something for free versus taking advantage of nothing at no time. These other 2 that I have selected, Overclock, Unraveling, and then Horde Shuttle, the third one, don't really apply to anything. I just kept them on because, as you guys know, I've been running a lot of Strand, in this season. So I keep those on just because I don't have better options right now. But with Act 2 coming out here, we may be able to change this up a bit. As far as the armor goes, the most important thing to do is make sure you have a harmonic siphon and a siphon that matches whatever your non-harmonic siphon is matching. So make sure you have solar, which is your harmonic siphon, and stasis. You want to be able to spawn orbs of power instantly from rapid kills with either weapon. Make sure you have a heavy ammo finder on, and your general armor mod is completely up to you. Getaway Artist makes another appearance, and this one is no different, but we're going to have some considerations. When we consume our Arc Grenade and create our Arc Soul, we're also going to spawn a Bleak Watcher turret. That's part of the game here. So every time that you have your Arc Grenade consumed, you're going to get a Stasis turret on top of it. So if you decide that you want to Phoenix dive into the ground, you can have 3 turrets going at the same time, all giving you ability energy back in tandem with one another on top of the weapons and or other abilities you might be using, like your melee or heck, even your super. You can spawn all 3 turrets and then pop your super and then have all your turrets as well as your super going at the same time. Now it seems like it might be overkill, but it's pretty darn fun to watch on screen, let me tell you. As far as the mods go, make sure that you have 2 impact inductions. The reason for this is you're not actually going to spawn any orbs of power from your grenade. So the least you can do is get your grenade back faster. When you spam your melee, you get grenade energy back. And of course, you want to make sure you have heavy-handed. Your powered melee final blows create orbs of power. So here we go. Get your orb of power going and get your grenade back at the same time a little bit faster. Put on whatever general armor mods that you need. It is not often you see me have a mobility mod on anything Warlock related, but I just wanted to get above a T3 so that I didn't lose any movement speed. For the chest armor, make sure you've got 2 damage mods that match whatever damage resistance you're going to need for said activity. Make sure your reserve mod matches your heavy. First and foremost, your heavy is what you want to have your reserve mimic. Don't worry if you are running a special stasis or a special solar weapon. Worry about the heavy, because special ammo bricks spawn more frequently than heavy ammo bricks. And then whatever general armor mod that you want to run, just put that on to spec into whatever you need to. For the leg armor, I recommend running Absolution, Innervation, and Invigoration. The only exception is if you are running in the Nether Arena and you need additional health, swap out Invigoration for Recuperation and then put on whatever general armor mod that you need. It's not really necessary with a build that's supposed to be fun first and foremost to put on surge mods, but I guess if you wanted to, you could drop Absolution, make sure you keep your Innervation, and then you could put a surge mod on for if you're running a stasis heavy weapon or a solar heavy weapon. That way you get a little bit of extra damage tick to your weapons, but it's totally up to you. I didn't find it necessary when I was running the last Nightfall, but you might, or you may just want to have it because you're used to having it. It's totally up to you. Last but not least is going to be the Warlock Bond. You want to make sure that you have Reaper because you are going to be using Phoenix Dive on a regular basis. Get your Orb of Power from your next weapon final blow. Make sure you have Bomber equipped because you want your grenade back as fast as possible. 1000% make sure you got Font to Restoration, because even if you're not getting your health back in the Nether Arena, you're going to be getting back your class ability, which is your Phoenix Dive, which is your Hellion. And then make sure you put on whatever general armor mod that you need to get to the stats that you desire most for your build. So if you're lacking in something, this would be the time to take it to the next tier. So that is the build. Fire and Ice, WoW Amplified, Lightning, Fire and Ice 2.0, whatever you want to call it. This is an extremely fun build, and although we don't get a lot of stasis or, well, not a lot, we get no stasis love this season so far, or solar love this season so far. That doesn't make this build any less usable or sensible. Depending on how you outfit this, you can virtually take this into anything, even without a single artifact mod, and still be able to complete activities just on the ability to make sure you have your champs covered and you understand the intrinsic perks of the exotic weapons that you can be running. You can still proc Amplified regardless of whatever the artifact is with your Getaway Artists. So either way, it doesn't really matter. You're going to get your Amplified from here. You can still stun champs with Wicked Implement. You can still stun champs with your Aberrant Action. You can still stun a champ with your machine guns, whichever machine guns that you want. So all you're doing virtually is taking advantage of this column right here. You're just speccing into what the flavor of the season is, so to speak, and the rest is totally up to you. But fire and ice have always gone together as far as builds have gone with, with the release of stasis. Once Prismatic brought it all together, suddenly the possibilities were endless. It used to be one person would run solar, one person would run stasis, and you guys would go into an activity and one person would be freezing everything while the next person is just lighting everything on fire, and you would decimate, whatever activity that you were in because you had such complementary strengths. Now, with those two basically merged together with the Prismatic release, you are the two teammates all in one. So making builds like this and you basically have like this over here, the way, once you get your armor set up, you're not going to have to maintain it. It's there. So all you got to worry about is, hey, what sounds fun today? It's essentially, I don't want to use the term future proof, but the way that stasis and solar function by themselves as individual elements, once you combine them together, you essentially can take care of an entire battlefield by yourself, regardless if there's champs or not. You have a fix for everything. It just depends on what weapons stun the champs. And quite honestly, everyone likes piercing sidearms. At least that's my general consensus. I don't think I've ever heard anyone be like, you know what, I really hate using a Baron action to pierce barrier champs, bubbles. Baron action is fun to use. Wicked Implement is fun to use. But you know what's also fun to use? Polaris Lance is fun to use. Still Hunt is fun to use. Lord of Wolves is fun to use. Sunshot's fun to use. I mean, Tanasha's Mastery is fun to use. Lost Signal. So you can make this build 100% you. And if you're just a casual player looking at this video going, the chances of me running a GM Derf are probably -5 in 1,000. That's fine, because this build is supposed to be all about bringing fire and ice together. It's blending the best of both worlds and creating a build that not only makes you even move faster, which is why we have Getaway Artists attached, but also looks really cool on the screen. Like I said, I already ran a Nightfall with this build looking exactly how it is on your screen right now, and I did fine. But if you're not going to be running, higher end content, you're just going to be doing strikes. You're just going to be, doing campaign-like activities, or maybe you're just doing some exotic missions, or maybe you're just an overall casual player. You get on once a week and you're looking for something fun to do. This build's going to work regardless of what you want to use it for. It's just going to depend on making sure that you're outfitted for the damages you're going to receive from the enemies, making sure you're fast enough, which is why we want to be amplified, and then make sure your fragments match up, which is why we went over those, and then make sure that your artifact reflects all the weapon possibilities that you could have. You can't have 3 selections in the 5th column. If you could, I would just have particle reconstruction selected all the time. But unfortunately, these are your most powerful options. So, that's just how it is. But either way, once you have these set, and you pick the weapons that you want, that these are going to affect the most, you're set. Now pick the weapons that you want. Now pick the strike you want to do. Now pick the planet that you want to go roam around. Go pick the gambit. Go pick whatever you want to do. So anyways, so that's the build. And I use the term build loosely because this build is going to be 100% individualistic. No matter who's watching this, you can make this totally about you. These are just ideas that I have from the harder content that I ran right before making this video, just to prove to someone who is like, well, I don't know if solar and stasis are really going to be viable this season. Okay, let's try it out. And this is what I ran. Now, did I blow the doors off? No. I mean, there's obvious buffs to Arc and Void and Strand this season. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and act like this is going to somehow replace Arc and Strand this season. But in and of himself, even in it of itself, this build works. Exactly how I have it on your screen, exactly the perks that I have selected, exactly the armor, exactly the fragments, exactly the super. I still got through a Nightfall no problem. Which means if I can do it, you can do it. But it's totally up to you. If you're just out to have fun, hey, that's great too, because that's why I made this build, to have some fun. So if you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a guardian out there who has not, first of all, if you know a guardian out there who hasn't seen my first Fire and Ice video, make sure you send it to them. And then if you know a guardian out there who's looking for a way to incorporate Fire and Ice, Solar and Stasis in this season, despite not really having any Stasis or Solar love, feel free to share this video with them or send them my way. My goal is to help as many people enjoy the game more, anywhere that they may find themselves in the game. Whether you're just a beginner, a savvy vet, or someone with a goofy side like me, either way, this build will totally work for you. So what I'm going to do is I've got some more highlights. I'm just going to go through some of the highlights and kind of talk you guys through what you're going to see on the screen. I'm not going to roll into the moon on this one. I'm just going to do something totally different and roll with another video, kind of like what you saw at the intro. So I appreciate you guys checking it out. I'm going to roll over to that right now. So as you can see, we're running the expert loss sector in the blooming. My first goal was to see how easily I could stun an unstoppable champion with Wicked Implement and my stasis turret combined. Obviously, you know that I could have whittled him down there all the way until he died, but I decided just to finish him off, and I did spawn the extra special ammo brick for myself and my teammate, but it was just me and him. I was running the solar melee just to see how fast I could get melee energy back, and it didn't really matter what I did. You could see right there I stunned an overload with just using Wicked Implement before I pulled out my machine gun to finish him off. But all the elements come together, and the supers coming back in a minute virtually make you a roaming fireball at any given time. You gotta remember that if you scorch targets enough, they will ignite. Well, ignitions stun unstoppable champions. And I've got my Baron action, so when these take and they spawn their little shields or whatever, their little bubbles, you can shoot right through them. That's the benefit of using sidearms this season, is they are piercing sidearms, which means shields, bubbles, whatever, you can shoot right through them. So even if it's not a champ that, will actually get stunned by a sidearm, such as this unstoppable that I'm firing at right now, I'm firing through that shield and getting damage. Of course, my teammate, he wanted to use super in that, so I know you saw that in there. But you can see I've pretty much got a turret spawned at really any given time. You see I've got the Hellion there. I don't have one now. We're in the boss fight right now, but there's really no shortage to the abilities that you can use at any given time. So here we go. I got the Stasis turret. I've got the Arc Buddy. I've got Transcendence procced. I just did my Phoenix dive. So now I've got 3 turrets, plus I've got Transcendence, plus I'm amplified, plus I've got my Wicked Implement that's going to be slowing enemies that I land precision hits with. And if that's not enough, I can pull out my Baron action like right there, spread Scorch, and also deal with area DPS, as well as I still am refreshing, well, I was refreshing my Transcendence ability. Now, survivability in a non-surge build in a activity that, is a higher end like an endgame, you're going to have to kind of go a little bit slower. I went a little bit faster in this just to see how it would hold up. So whether you're running Polaris Lance or Wicked Implement or Baron Action or the exotic sidearm or whatever, however you want to mod your class, however you want to mod your build weapon-wise, as long as it works for you, that's truly all that matters. I also did runs with Polaris Lance. I also did runs with Sunshot, as well as a different machine gun. And I mean, they all went pretty much the same. It really just depends on how well you feel with each weapon. So mod it to how you want is the best thing I can say to anyone wondering if this build will really work for them. So that is the video. If you did find anything helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Please share it with a guardian who might like stasis and solar and want to combine them as a warlock. And honestly, thank you guys for all your support. I will see you next time. Take care.